This is the Burning Presales podcast, and today's Burning Presales question will be answered by none other than Peter Cohan, who is the founder and principal of The Second Derivative and the author of the great demo methodology and the book by the same name. Okay, Peter, I've got a question for you. What is the first thing that a pre-sales leader is looking to understand today versus if I were to look 10 to 15 years ago at this profession? There's obviously been an evolution in the role, as there has been in most revenue generation roles. So specifically pre-sales leaders, is there a one thing that they're trying to understand versus 10 to 15 years ago?
So absolutely. And I would say if you go back 10 or 15 years and you had a new leader come into an existing position, he or she wants to understand, what is my team doing? What are the big opportunities that they're working on? How are they aligned with the sales organization? And it almost always mapped down to what's the ratio, what's our headcount ratio between sales and pre-sales? And for most managers, the burning question was, how can I get more pre-sales because they are always stretched?
Yeah.
So they're looking for ways to increase, if you will, the pre-sales side of that ratio. Today, I think it's an interesting watershed because there are many pre-sales leaders that are still looking at exactly that question, but many of them have now turned it upside down and they're asking the question, given my existing pre-sales sales ratio, how can I derive more value? How can I support more salespeople using my existing headcount, my existing staff? In other words, and this plays right into consensus, how can I scale in a way that actually enables a better scaling algorithm than simply, I've got a 2-to-1 ratio now, so I want to make it 2-to-1 and just double everything. So does that resonate?
Would you argue that because of that switch, it's less about prescribing a ratio now than it was before? I mean, I still get questions from customers asking me, what is the ideal ratio? They saw our work and comp report and they're like, all right, what is the average, like 4-to-1, or should it be 5-to-1, 6-to-1 to be ideal? It feels like we're leaving the realm of there being an actual optimal ratio and more in the realm of business by business. It's just a matter of making your team not just more productive but more effective. I don't know. Is there any validity to that?
Yeah. So you're you're singing my tune. This is still very much the starting position for most pre-sales leaders, and I'd say to a certain degree, the more junior pre-sales leaders start with that thinking. What's my current ratio, and how do I get more headcount? Because in their minds, more headcount means I can do a better job serving and supporting the sales functions and everything else that we're doing. And I think what's going on today is with the advent of various tools that are appearing to both track and manage what's going on within one's organization and to, if you will, extend what goes on in the pre-sales organization in a much more automated fashion or more intelligent fashion, there is now truly the opportunity to improve those ratios in a direction of higher productivity and higher effectiveness, if you will. So the next question that people are asking is, okay, if I have a tool like this, and I'm hopefully moving away from Excel and into something Microsoft, into a bespoke tool, what should I be tracking?
Right.
What objectives should I be setting? What goals should I be setting? What vision should I be articulating overall? And so I think for a newly hired pre-sales leader, the first question that one has to ask is, what is my vision? What's my overarching vision for the organization? So, for example, do I want, I remember there's a pre-sales leader who said, our job is to make, this is actually communicating to the sales organization, she said, our job is to make you fabulously successful. That was her overarching vision. She was basically just selling the sales organization that we're going to make you fabulously successful. That's our job. Another one that actually a colleague of mine used to articulate, which I thought was very, very sage, was we want to add value in every interaction. We want to add value with every pre-sales interaction. Okay, that's an overarching vision. Now, how do you define a goal that supports that? How do you then specify the objectives that help you achieve those goals or that goal? And then what are the KPIs that enable you to track that? I think that's the burning question or set of questions for pre-sales leadership today.
So let me ask you from a different perspective. That's really helpful, by the way. But I asked the original question, the first thing pre-sales leaders are looking to understand today versus 10 to 15 years ago. I want to look at that same question, but from the perspective of the sales leader. You just mentioned that, there is that relationship between sales and pre-sales. So is there something that sales leaders are thinking of and trying to understand, or should be trying to understand, as it relates to their pre-sales teams that's different today than it was 10 to 15 years ago? Or is it the same set of problems? I guess, maybe it's the same answer, but from a different perspective. But I'm curious if you have any thoughts on, from the sales leader perspective, should they be thinking, I guess, differently about their pre-sales function than they used to?
Well, they should, and some are and many aren't. And it's really dependent on, I'd say, two vectors. One is the actual job title, and the other is their level of thinking. So by that I mean, if you are a sales leader and your job is to bring in new license revenues, things haven't really changed, because your objectives are based on getting as many deals closed as possible, regardless of the quality of those deals or the quality of fit of those customers. And if your objectives are simply to generate revenue, you don't care about churn, right? Conversely, if you're talking about a chief revenue officer who's looking at the 25% that's coming from new licenses and maybe the 75% of revenues that's coming from renewals, then your perspective is quite a bit different. Your perspective then is one of, how do we ensure renewals, because those are the low-cost pieces of our revenue stream, if you will, right?
Yeah.
Does that help?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Thank you so much.